is Imtiaz, welcoming you to another Asian Agribiz podcast. The adoption of in-ovo vaccination is getting more common due to the growth of the broiler industry. This technology is more reliable and consistent than vaccinating day-old chicks or vaccinating on farms. However, there are things we need to consider for in-ovo vaccination to work effectively. My colleague Meliana talks to Gerd de Lange, Senior Poultry Specialist at Royal Past Reform, about factors contributing to successful in-ovo vaccination.
Hi, Gerd. Thanks for being here. In-ovo vaccination may still be uncommon, but adoption rates are increasing because of the growth of the broiler industry. What do you think? What are the advantages and disadvantages of in-ovo vaccination?
Well, let me first thank Agribiz very much to giving Royal Past Reform the opportunity to speak about this interesting topic. In-ovo vaccination is actually not as uncommon as you mentioned. In countries, for example, like USA and Brazil, in-ovo vaccination is already a reality for almost all hatcheries since the early 2000s. And in other countries, it is getting more common to vaccinate eggs during the transfer from setter to hatcher, rather than vaccinating the day-old chicks in the hatchery by subcutaneous or intramuscular vaccination. In-ovo vaccination with the current modern immune complex and vector vaccines even replaces vaccination in the farm, which actually means that broilers, for example, are only in-ovo vaccinated, and there is no more need, for example, to do the drinking water vaccination for Gumboro disease in the broiler farm. And there are quite a lot of advantages. Let me just mention a few of them. No need to have a very big vaccination crew. Just a small team will supervise the in-ovo vaccination. Another advantage is that in-ovo vaccination is more reliable and consistent than vaccinating day-old chicks or vaccinating chicks in the farm. And the last advantage I like to mention is that many eggs can be vaccinated at a very high speed, and chicks can be sent to the customer much sooner after the hatch if they do not need to be vaccinated in the hatchery anymore. And talking about disadvantages, if the equipment is well maintained and the crew is properly trained and the right procedures are being followed, I don't think there are any disadvantages. In fact, I only see advantages. Disadvantages only appear with poor management, lack of servicing, and bad procedures.
So, how does in-ovo vaccination work? How to determine the correct timing for effective in-ovo vaccination?
Those are actually very good questions. Let me try to answer them. In-ovo vaccination is the procedure to deliver the vaccine to a chicken embryo inside the egg. The in-ovo device will vaccinate all viable hatching eggs on one setter tray at the same time. This is done in the late stage of incubation, during transfer of hatching eggs from setter to hatcher, which is normally around 18 days and 12 hours. The in-ovo device will drill a hole in the shell, and next a needle will go down to deliver the right amount of vaccine to the correct place. Ideally spoken, that correct place is the amniotic fluid, which will be orally consumed by the embryo just before pipping the air cell and hatching. Certain vaccines, for example for coccidiosis, will not result in immunity when the embryo itself is injected. So that kind of vaccine needs to be deposited in the amniotic fluid. To determine the correct time for in-ovo vaccination, we need to consider the physiological development of the embryo. We use a scoring system to check if the incubation time, which is normally seen as the embryo age, matches with the optimal embryo development. The optimal biological age for the in-ovo vaccination is between 18 days and 0 hours till 19 days and 2 hours, and we normally target for 18 days and 12 hours. And this is linked to the fact that at this stage there is still sufficient amniotic fluid present around the embryo.
Okay, sometimes vaccination does not work effectively. What are the reasons that in-ovo vaccination might not work effectively? What are the consequences? Will different in-ovo devices produce different results for hatchability and subsequent birth performance?
Okay, another set of good questions. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. First of all, what do we mean by non-effective in-ovo vaccination? Well, that could mean anything between insufficient or no immune response, but it could also mean lower hatchability, but also it could mean contamination leading to increased first week mortality. And there are several critical success factors which need to be adhered to avoid this from happening. When the equipment is not well maintained or the crew is not well trained, the risk for this non-effective in-ovo vaccination will increase. Also factors like ensuring the proper upright egg position in the setter tray, achieving uniform embryo development in combination with proper timing of in-ovo vaccination, and striving for optimal hygiene are all important. Basically, in-ovo devices should not reduce hatchability rates. New technologies are being introduced, and these technologies have some advantages when compared to the classical machines or brands. With SmartVac, we at Royal Pus Reform have introduced the embryo soft touch technology. Let me try to explain what I mean by that. This technology has the ability sensing the embryo inside the egg and delivering the vaccines to the amniotic fluid. And by doing that, we avoid that the skin of the embryo is being perforated and that the muscles are being touched, and consequently we avoid that the embryo is being hurt.
Okay, how does hatchery management contribute to successful in-ovo vaccination? What specific hatchery management strategies does Pus Reform recommend?
Well, first of all, let's say that good hatchery management is not only the key for optimal chick quality and highest hatch of fertile, but it is also important for successful in-ovo vaccination. And we at Royal Pus Reform strongly believe in good hatchery practices and management. And through our academy, we perform continuous training of our internal people, but also training of our customers. Because we truly believe that knowledge and also the transfer of knowledge is the key to the success for a hatchery.
Next, how to achieve uniform embryo development, which is a must for successful in-ovo vaccination.
You are very right. Uniform embryo development is indeed very important for successful in-ovo vaccination. It is important that at the moment of in-ovo vaccination, all embryos are at the proper stage of physiological development, because this gives the highest rate of delivering the vaccine at the proper location, which, as I said before, is in the amniotic fluid. You see, if some embryos are developing faster and have advanced too much, they might even already have internally pipped, and that means that there is not normal presence of amniotic fluid. In fact, the focus that most hatcheries have on achieving a narrow hatch window will also help to create uniform development we need for successful in-ovo vaccination. Let me mention just some important factors to consider. First of all, it's important that at the breeder farm we are striving for a uniform cooling of the eggs after they are leaving the hen's body. Because if the eggs are cooling down uniformly, then the embryos will also be at the same stage of development when the eggs are entering into the setter before they start incubation. Also, it's important to minimize the egg storage time differences in between the same setter, because long stored eggs simply take longer to incubate, have a slower embryonic development than shorter stored eggs. So if we manage to keep the storage time within a specific setter as small as possible, we also create uniform start of incubation and uniform embryonic development. Also important is to preheat the eggs before start of incubation to make sure that all the eggs are at the same temperature, and normally we are striving for 81 Fahrenheit, which is equal to 27 centigrades, to bring all the eggs to that temperature before we start heating the entire egg mass up to incubation temperature. And this will help to start incubation as uniform as possible. And last but not least, of course, it's very important that we are creating inside the setter uniform incubation conditions, especially temperature, because temperature is the driving force behind embryonic development.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank Asian Agribiz once more for giving Pasriform the opportunity to speak about this. It's important to understand the concept of in-ovo vaccination. And I also would like to say that the importance of having good hatchery management and a good, well-trained, motivated crew of people should not be underestimated. That's always important. It's important just for ordinary hatchery results, but of course it's also important if hatcheries are aiming to go for in-ovo vaccination, that they understand that incubation starts already in the breeder farm and that best management practices from the breeder farm to the hatchery and also within the hatchery are beneficial. Not only, as I said, for the best hatchery results, but also for aiming for the most successful in-ovo vaccination results. So I think that is all I wanted to say about this topic for now. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for all that great info.
I hope you take some valuable information from this episode. Thank you for listening in. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more on the Asian animal protein industries, please visit www.asian-agribiz.com.